I am Adam Lundy, co-host of They Live by Film, a podcast dedicated to bringing you film discussion and interviews from around the world. Every week, my co-hosts Chris Haskell, Zach Bryant and I discuss a wide range of films, from monumental classics like Vertigo and The Rules of the Game, to the craziest, schlockiest movies ever made like Deathbed and everything in between. We are also lucky enough to have sat down with some of the biggest players in the boutique Blu-ray and film restoration game. If this is your thing, then come hang out with us every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, wherever you normally stream your podcasts, and now as part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Hello there, and welcome back to The Disconnected. I'm here with Ja, who is a sort of different type of video for this channel, in which we're mostly going to be talking about art, but I mean, this is still a very visual medium, and honestly, there's some really cool stuff about the actual physical media side of it, so we're going to discuss that. Ja, thanks so much for doing this, man. You're an inspiration and a brilliant mind, and I'm honored to have you.
Those are some kind words, my friend. I feel the same way about you. I'm just so happy to just be a part of this. This is such a cool spot. So it's my pleasure.
It's been an interesting year. We were both part of now that I go to say it out loud, I don't even know what to call it. A group, a class, a session, a fun network hangout, and there are multiple conversations that have come from that I'm just like inspired by the people that were a part of it, and you were one that really stuck out because every time we met, there's something else cool visually that like nobody else is doing. So I mean, let's jump into the art side. Like, what do you do, first of all? What do you tell people you do?
Well, I tell people I'm a painter and a muralist for the most part. I do a lot of other things, but I think like that's like the dream. If you could just do like one thing and stay focused, if you had the ability to do so,
Right.
which I do not, then yeah, I'd say I'm a painter. I'm a painter. You know, I love to paint. It is my driving force. It gets me up in the middle of the night to like put 5 brushstrokes down, and I'm like, all right, good, good. The madness shall subside now.
All about those brushstrokes. Love that.
Yeah, man.
So how'd you get into it to begin with? Was there something originally that inspired you, or was it just you were immediately drawn to it?
I'm a kid from the 80s who used to hang out in like arcades. And so we would go home, we would go to hang out with all our friends in their basements, and then we would try and redraw all the stuff we saw in video games and make like paper toys of them and stuff like that. And so like drawing little kind of nondescript Street Fighter-esque type things or G.I. Joes or just I'm trying to think all the weird names of all these Hasbro the cartoons in the 80s.
Right.
All those things, we just thought they were so cool. So we were always like trying to draw them, and like I didn't fall into love with being a painter until probably about my teens. When I was like real little, we used to always get these like watercolor coloring books. It was a big thing in the 80s.
Yeah.
And you would just kind of take like a brush stroke. They give you like a little cheap plastic brush, and you dip it in water, and then you follow these color like I'm trying to think of it.
Most
Color
basic
pencil
of colors too.
type of thing or whatever. And I was way too impatient, so the whole page would be brown. And it was always one of those things where I was like, I got to do this. I felt this like nervous energy that I needed to like keep making things constantly. And so, now as I'm about to be 42, I've been doing it for almost my whole life. So
that's a lot to look back on and consider that you've been doing that since you were a young kid, but it's obviously morphed over the years. Are you still inspired by pop culture for a lot of what you do, or what inspires individual pieces now?
I kind of ran the other way from that eventually. When I went to art school, it kind of turned me against the art world in a lot of ways. I hated it for a little while because I was like, "This is all I've ever been." And, you have a consciousness of, you have like a suddenly like crisis of who you are and what you've
Right.
done your whole life. And I had this like thought process that was like, I'm not looking at anything else ever again. I'm just going to draw from my mind. And then, a couple more years go by and you're like, that was stupid. I'm totally gonna change it up. I feel weird now when I do. Like I'll definitely do some stuff off of pop culture every once in a while, but I always feel weird about it. I'm just like, oh, you're such a poser. And it's like people don't care. Nobody cares.
A hard
But
part,
it's
pop culture
just
stuff pays the bills a lot of times.
it does though. I mean, it's weird. It's weird to do like a they have a thing called Awesome Con. Awesome Con is like DC and Maryland's version and Virginia's version of like Comic Con.
Right.
So they have those, and you can get like an artist alley booth. They are so expensive, it's
Yeah.
insane. And you make a bunch of like merch basically out of it. You make a bunch of like original stuff, but you also make lots of pop culture stuff.
Yeah.
And I've definitely done them throughout a few years. I mean, I've drawn some stuff. I've gone on podcast or not podcast. I've gone on like Instagram shows, and we've had like Artist Alley, and we've just drawn random things, and they've been like, "I need you to draw this," and I'm like, "Okay."
I
I'm like, "It's
guess.
probably not gonna look like it, but let's go for it anyways."
Well, I mean, we're talking about cons for a second. So, I mean, one of the things that artists are always, I don't know, for many it can be like touchy to discuss. What was the first time you sold something? What's the first time that somebody paid for your art?
Let me see. I remember this because my father brokered it and asked for a cut. So it stuck in my mind. I was
Thanks,
like,
Dad.
I can't work with other people anymore. They want too much of me. I did this like drawing on that computer paper where you tore the sides off of on with like crayon, and like I was always like a mixed media person. And I think it was partially
Nice.
because like I'd run out of something and I'm like, whatever, this'll work. And I think I did like it was somewhere between like a drawing of like Balrog from Street Fighter, which is basically like Tokyo's version of like Mike Tyson. Um, and I sold it to somebody for like $25. And I remember my dad was like, "So the commission on that's got to be like 50%." And I was like,
Woo!
"I'm gonna keep this, and you can get away from my art career." But I think that was probably the first time, and I was like in a car. We were at like I think we were in Tobago, uh, where my father's family's from, and we were in Trinidad and Tobago. We were in Tobago. We were driving in a Jeep, and I had this binder of all these drawings that I carried with me that were like my precious.
Nice.
And yeah, they like looked through them. A friend of his was looking through them. She's like, "I really like this. This is pretty cool." And she was like, "I'll give you $25." And I said, "Yes." And he's like, "You have to bargain. You have to talk with people and get them to do more." And I'm like, "I don't care.
Right.
Give me monies." And, that's how it started. I probably should have taken it in American, but I didn't. So that's probably worth like $5 in actuality. But it was fun, man. It was just like I like the rush of it. There was like an excitement in this is something that I made that someone's going to treasure.
Right.
And it just kind of became like this strange addiction after that.
So what's a good way to ask this? What are some of the things that feel the same from that first time? And when somebody still in 2023 is like, "Ja, I want that piece. It's speaking to me." What is the same thing that you're feeling deep inside when they say that?
The work answer or the real answer?
We got to hear that real answer, my friend.
The real answer, nothing. The real answer, I think I'm numb to it now. I think
Yeah.
now when people say it, I go, "Yeah, all right, cool," and I just keep going. But I think it's because I've learned to like make work, and then whether it's a personal project or even like a commission or anything like that, like I make it, and then like I kind of just let it go, and it is a part of whatever it becomes at
Yeah.
that point. So if it goes to someone and they really like it, great. If it goes to someone and then they put it in the closet, no one ever sees it again, and hopefully it goes to an estate sale one day and breaks up a marriage. That's what I that's what I want. I want a War of the Roses type moment, but over my work. It's a long game. It's like a long game,
Yeah.
really. It's what it is.
There's that moment when you call something done and that piece of art is really no longer yours anymore. So I totally get
Yeah.
that.
You just gotta let it go. You'll drive yourself you'll drive yourself up the wall trying to like figure out the destination of all these things once they leave your hands.
Yep.
And you kind of just have to gotta let that go. You'll be better for it, is what I always tell people.
So what about the journey from that first sale to the moment when you thought, maybe this could actually like pay for my life? Was there an actual transition for you?
There have been some checks out there. There have definitely been some checks where I was like, whoa. I'm not dead anymore. Type of thing. And that was crazy. Yeah, it was weird. I had this theory when I was like in my 20s that like if I made as many paintings as my favorite painters made in their entire lives, then I was a master of my craft. Which doesn't make any sense because like they spent their lives doing it,
Right.
and I was just kind of rushing through work. I think I did like 300 paintings in one year one time. Like it was just madness. But at the time, I think I didn't have a TV, so it was like, this is what I do. It was like
Right.
the radio, some music, and like, and this is what I do. And I just kind of just fell into it. And then all these people started like approaching me because they saw my work, and I wasn't advertising it
Yeah.
so much, but it was just, and they started buying it, and they were buying it like a lot. And that kind of gave me the idea that I was like, you might be good at this. You might not just like doing this. You might actually be good at this.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the turning point. I can't really pinpoint it. It was probably like my 20s, sometime in my 20s, when I was like, all right, there might be, we might want to take this a little more seriously. This could work out. This could work out.
So, unlike a lot of modern artists, you've not brought up like Wacom tablets or digital creations or anything here. Why not, Ja? What's the difference there?
I mean, I definitely have used
Mm-hmm.
those. I don't know. It doesn't have the same. I didn't have the same grain. Like I'm that weirdo who goes into like an art store and like feels the paper with his hands.
Same.
You know,
Love
I'm
doing
I'm
stuff
the
like
guy
that.
who I'm also the one who like feels something he doesn't like is like wiping his hands on his shirt. Like I look like I'm just like this weird like aristocrat for some reason. So I've done stuff with Wacom. I have a Wacom tablet. I have like an iPad. I have those things. When I want to do like merch, I'll do sometimes digital because it just transfers better.
Yeah.
But that was a struggle to get to the point where I was comfortable even doing that, where I didn't feel like it looked. Now I know this is a controversial thing to say. It didn't look like crappy NFT art. And so yeah, I don't know. I didn't get into it. To this day, like I know a lot of really amazing digital artists. I am not one of those people.
Yeah.
I love physically making stuff with my hands. It's just some of the tactile aspect of it. It connects like there's a root and it just kind of grabs hold of it.
Well, and that's the thing, especially for me, obviously, as I sit in front of this throne of random movies that most people don't have in their home anymore. That's what excites me about things like you. When I order a zine from somebody and it comes in a hand painted item with
It did.
I mean, just to show everybody, we've got the card on the inside. You've got stickers for people to actually touch. And then the coolest part, of course, is the art in here. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time so nobody can see all of it. But you should go purchase this from Jaw. If there are any left, they're probably not at this point.
There's two. There's
Oh,
two left.
jeez.
I sold like two in like a day, a couple days ago. Somebody just called me and they were like, "Hey, send me two." And I was like, "All right, cool."
So where did that come from? And obviously, I probably should have showed the cover a little bit better. But we've got Murder by the Dozen. Why this in 2023?
I was so I'm one of those artists who is ridiculous and has tried lots of other people's like projects and then just decided they didn't like them
Yeah.
because persnickety or whatever. And so like yeah, there was like Inktober and all this stuff. And I remember one year I was like, I'm just not interested in these prompts. I'm just gonna make my own.
Yep.
So I then named it Jawtober because humble people. And then from that, I just was thinking about it, and I was like, it would be. And I made like posters, and I did all these things, and slowly but surely, I started doing more kind of focused work during the month of October. So I was like, I'm not gonna make 30 pieces because like I don't want to have to keep this stuff. It's gonna work out. And so I was like, what if I just do like 12 paintings? I'll do 12 paintings for the month. And I want to do crows because those have been some of my more popular works. And I thought about it in a zine aspect, which is kind of funny because I typically just make work. I don't think about it on how it's going to sell,
Yeah.
which is probably why I make too many things that are like 5 feet tall because I don't think stuff through sometimes. But and this was just one of those things where I was like, this made me really happy to do. And so I started doing all these like little surreal drawings and kind of paintings and weird kind of just textures and stuff. And it was fun. And I've kind of always told all the artists I know, like, if you're making art and you're not enjoying it, like,
Right.
make something else.
Exactly. It is a really interesting zine just to sit and sort of I guess like digest in a weird way, because it's one of those things that it's obviously you're not going to leaf through it. You want to sit there and really immerse in it and feel kind of what you're trying to feel, and what you're trying to convey through all this, because it's dynamic in a way that we don't really get from a lot of stuff nowadays. And I mean, I guess the real underlying question there is, what do you want people to get out of your art? Is there an overlying theme that you are trying to convey? Is it more of a personal thing? What does it mean to you?
I try to oftentimes make sure that like people feel included. Like I think that's the hardest thing. When you look at a lot of work that's in like galleries and in museums and stuff, like it's beautiful
Yeah.
and it's skillful, but like I've always had this theory, and it's ridiculous, I imagine, but there's all this artwork that got destroyed around like for during World War II.
Yep.
And during that time process, a lot of the work that got saved is very similar work. That's why we have like the abstract period
Yeah.
and all these things because like and the most for the most part a lot of it kind of has the same feel to it. Like there's not like an abundance of like Japanese cubist painters, and I'm sure there were, but you don't see that.
Right.
And so I try in a lot of ways to make my subject matter the people who I feel are mostly unseen because like they should feel like they're looking, there should be a Mona Lisa version of all these different types of people in the world. And for me, like that's really important, as far as my figures go.
Right.
The surrealist stuff, that just comes out of nowhere. Uh, that's just craziness. But I try to think about that when I make a lot of work, just because I don't know. I want people to feel like they are works of art, and they're the things when they look in the mirror, they can feel beautiful. Like that to me is really important to me. Like I've had people at shows go, "I love this piece because I've never seen anything like this, and it reminds me of so and so, my dad or my
Yeah.
mom or my sister or myself or my brother or whatever." And like I really like that. Like that to me is like such a good feeling to convey for people who I don't know.
Right. That's the
So
that's the coolest thing about art for me, is that there's so many people that, I mean, you'll never even see half the people that you're touching, that you're inspiring, that you are giving great feelings to, and they are looking at something of yours every single day, and just enjoying life because of that piece.
That's a fun way to look at it. I don't think I ever thought about it that way. I like it. I like it. I'm going to borrow that.
The unseen is an interesting idea, and one of the things, probably just to touch on for just a second, but I mean, just how depressing it is, how much media over the years we've lost, and saying it like that, meaning mixed media as a piece, because we've lost tons of film, we've lost tons of TV, lost tons of art, but I mean, there's so many times where we have examples in history where certain people are literally controlling the narrative of what people get
Oh,
to
yeah.
see, and it sucks so much.
There's so many. Well, you look at like all these. The big thing, I think, if we refer to like movies, I guess is the best way to
Yeah.
think of it. Films. I think every time there's like some director's cut that comes out
Yep.
of whatever movie from 30 years ago, and then you're like, wow, that's a different movie.
Entirely.
That's a completely different movie than what you saw, forever ago.
Yeah.
Like, and it's so interesting to see that perspective, or it's like, oh, this is so this was completely about something else, and they just cut all
Yep.
that out, and it's like, wow, that's interesting
And somebody chose
and
that.
weird.
Somebody had the power and the audacity to choose that.
Like, it's too deep. Pull it back.
I
We need to make Hasbro toys.
one of the best examples of that, like right now, that's pretty relevant is The Warriors. I mean, one of the most like
Yeah.
impacting, influential films for quite a while, and for years you couldn't see the theatrical version, and just I believe this month the 4K version finally came out with the theatrical. And what's funny is the studio had released something called the director's cut for years. The director,
Yeah.
Walter Hill, never wanted that to go out like that. It was the studio doing it.
Weird.
And they asked him, he's like, yeah, cool, call it the director's cut. And now he finally changed it in 2023.
That movie took me in such a weird, like, Google spiral for a while, where I was like I started going through like YouTube and like looking at the people who the Warriors is based on, because like they had like the 1970s like child gangs that ran New York and New Jersey, and Chicago and all that. There were more gangs. It's very much like The Scene, where there's all the gangs in the park, and like there's like 2% of cops make up all of the gang,
Yep.
and it's the entire police force, and it's like it's just gigantic and it's crazy. And it's just so interesting because I'd see that, and then my wife found the book a couple years back, and my brother-in-law got really into it.
Yeah.
So then I read it. It is a completely different story. There are no heroes. It is very different. I do not recommend, if you have any type of euphoria about the Warriors, don't read that book. It's a good book, but it's going to mess up a lot of things for you.
Speaking of crafting the narrative, yeah, that's a big difference.
There's a lot of James Raymars in that book. Put it that way.
Well, I mean, we brought up movies, and movies is originally what brought us together. So what role does movies play in your life nowadays?
The funny thing was, I remember when I set up my first studio, I used to go to a Blockbuster, and I would go for like the 4 for $20 VHS set, and I just grab these random looking movies, and they would become the soundtrack for my paintings.
Nice.
And so the funny thing is, I could remember the words for movies, and still had watched them other than like over my shoulder occasionally. So that's kind of where it starts off, honestly. And then slowly it turns into, I watch a thing like one of the movies I've always loved for the artwork in it is a movie called The Science of Sleep. It is a weird, fantastic movie with Gabriel Garcia Bernal. And he is an insomniac who's just moved to France. His father died. He's living with his mother and her unit. She's off. She's off and about most of the time. And he has these like vivid dreams of being a talk show host. But his entire set is made up of like toilet paper tubes, I guess is the best way to describe it. And it's almost like this weird, like old set made of that. And I've always like wanted to do that as the backdrop for an art show. Like it's always sitting in the back of my mind where it's like, how much do you miss being burned by a
Right.
glue gun? You can do this. You can do this.
That's an interesting one. Science of Sleep. I haven't heard about that in a long time. I don't think I've seen it since it came out.
Nobody likes that movie but me. It's so sad. And I was like, yeah, it's like a French movie. They're all sad. What do you want?
That's true. I think Charlotte Gainsbourg's in that one too, right?
She is in that. She is in that. She is also a mess.
um,
In this case, in that movie specifically, in this example. But yeah, I mean, they're all like dysfunctional characters. But I
right.
mean, at the time when I was watching it, like I was a dysfunctional artist, so it made it relate. I related perfectly to it at the time. So
Movies brought us into that group in the beginning, but there's a few things that you've talked about on your channel surrounding movies. So what all do you cover on YouTube and stuff, so people can give a watch to that?
a lot of times, so I do a show on Monday mornings called Painter's Breakfast. And Painter's Breakfast is a silly show where I eat food in front of people and talk with my mouth open, with my mouth full of food, but not open. I cover my mouth most of the time. And we just talk about whatever. And a lot of times people ask me about movies they just saw. And they're like, hey, have you seen this thing or whatever? And we talk about it, you know? I think the funniest discussion I had was about Dune of all movies. Because I remember the original Dune with
Yeah,
Sting, and now they have the new one, and I don't mind the new one. I remember liking the weird sci-fi television movie series they
yep,
did, and just stuff like that. Like it's always been kind of fun. I like the references of movies because like you can say a thing and people go and it just hits them all in
yeah.
their head or whatever and takes them back. Like to this day, I still know people who go up to people and say shake and bake, and it's just funny. Like it's so stupid, but it's so funny at the same time.
Painter's Breakfast is incredibly calming, and on a Monday morning, especially like next week, even though Monday is a holiday, so it won't work for me. But I'm out of work all this week, so I probably will put it on next weekend just to get into that woo-saw part of the week. And it's nice. It's always nice just to catch up. And most of the time, I can't comment because I'm typing like crazy. But just to be able to hear the voice, and it's nice just to hear everybody checking in and seeing how the week is and see what's going on with you. It's fun.
I think the funniest thing about that is most of the time you ask people, you're like, so what are you having for breakfast? And they're like, I don't eat
Same.
breakfast. And you're like, I don't know why you like this show. I don't know why you like this show. I'm like, if you hate breakfast, I'm confused on what we're doing here.
Yeah. So what do you got going on right now with like any galleries coming up? Anything that you want to talk about?
I'm working on some commissions, which, I am famously a hater of
Yep.
commissions. Which is weird, but it's hard for me sometimes to make work for other people. So, but I do it, and I do it well. I like to think, but it can be sometimes like a sleepless
Yeah.
couple of weeks of me trying to like do something. I'm doing like an album cover for a guy right
Oh,
now,
nice.
which is kind of interesting. So that'll be fun. I'm not sure. I've got ideas about what I want to do with it, but to all the artists out there, I have learned the hard way that you have to give people contracts. I know you want to be nice. Don't be nice. Get a
Amen
contract.
to that.
There's many times I've built stuff up for people and they've gone, yeah, I don't think I'm going to go with this. You know what? Or something comes up and they go, well, I can't do this. And you're like, okay, cool. Well, I mean, could you compensate me for like all the time and art I made for you? And they're like, ghosted.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, cool. So now I at least get like 20% before I start showing people and discussing stuff with people just to cover like materials and time and
And the
stuff. It's
anxiety
not the
of it.
sexy part of being a painter. It's definitely not the sexy part of being an artist, but it's
Right.
in order to make a living at this, like you have to take it on that level, which sucks, but it is what it is.
What sucks is it kind of hits every industry, so everybody should be heeding that warning.
It's not good, man. People got to get better about this. Like it's such like a I don't think people understand. This is the soapbox moment. I think this is the thing that people don't get about it is it's like you really, even if you like, I said I'm not a huge fan of
Yeah.
commissions, But like when I make them, I put my heart into them. I put 35 years worth of experience into them. I do all these things, and like there's a labor of love that goes into that, and it's so heartbreaking and disappointing when people take advantage of you, because you're just like, well, like, am I wait? It makes me go like, well, am I wasting my
Right.
life? Like, what am I doing here? Am I if I'm just gonna do this, I might as well just stop.
Exactly.
You know, and it's not true, but for those moments that creeps in where you're just like, oh, what did I do to
Yep.
myself?
A lot of anxiety comes from those things for sure.
Man,
Uh,
it all works out in the end, man.
usually.
Yeah.
We've got a lot going on in life and all that, but to hear a word like muralist from somebody, I immediately like crumple on the inside, thinking of how I would feel making that sort of creative endeavor for myself. How do you do that? How do you create a piece of art that you're stoked about the world seeing on the side of a building somewhere? Like,
A lot of panic
yeah,
attacks. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of like, I'm not sure I'm going to sleep tonight because I'm painting and repainting it in my
yeah,
head, as well as like a mock that I've already done. But I'm still like, am I going to have enough time to do
yep,
this? How am I going to keep all this stuff on me? Because if I put it down and I walk forward and then I turn back around, it'll be
yep.
gone. Because people are jerks and they'll just steal stuff for no reason. They don't even know what it is. They steal it. Um, yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's hard, but it's such a beautiful thing when it works out though and it comes
Yeah,
together, and then it's there forever. Like there is a piece of mine that is in DC right now that is across the street from this bar called Jackie's, and I did this stoop for this customer who had a business, and I painted their stairs like a almost like a rug, basically, but like a funky
nice.
weird stuff that I do, weird stuff that
Yeah,
I do type right. And it worked out really well. I had a day to do it from like sun up to sundown, so that was a huge panic attack because typically I have like
yeah,
weeks to work on stuff. But it all worked out fine, and I mean, it's been there for many years now. It's been tagged, it's been all types of stuff, but it's still mostly there. And you just kind of, I remember the first time I heard somebody ran up to me to tell me, and I was like, I mean, that sucks, but there's nothing I can
right.
do about it. It's not mine.
Exactly.
You have to let it go. So I think that's kind of the main thing. Like, you'll spend hours and hours and weeks and months trying to work on these pieces, and then they go up, and then you have absolutely no control beyond that moment. Like you can set contracts with people that say if it gets messed up or the weather gets
Yep.
bad or it gets stripped, I'll come back and work on it and fix it for you. But in this day and age, some places don't want to do that. They don't want to be having an open contract with you
Interesting.
because they're like, well, no, because I do have to
Right.
pay you to do that.
Right.
So, I mean, it all kind of comes into it. There's so many facets of it that I don't think until you're in it, you don't realize you have to keep in mind. But I don't know, you just go at it with a dream and a hope and a couple paintbrushes, and hopefully it works
Yeah.
out.
A little bit of an existential question for you. So, because of my upbringing, I had, I'll just get right to it. I had religion shoved down my throat. And because of that, I can't like normally feel pride about the work that I do ever. I don't know what it is. I think everything sucks. It's not even like perfectionist. It's just I'm terrible and everybody feels the same way no matter what they say. How do you deal with yourself and your work? Do you look at something and you're genuinely proud of it? Is there a layer of you that's still trying to get to that? Because I know for a lot of creatives, that can be a genuine fight that they're reaching for.
There are many levels of self doubt. I I come from a once polytheistic religious background, and then they moved here and they became very monotheistic. So they joined like the Catholic Church and all that stuff, and it never really grabbed hold of
Right.
me. But the humbleness of it, the inability to just like take a
Yep.
compliment, is something that I struggle with to this day. Um, I think the funniest, it's like the nastiest thing to say, but it's the most truthful thing to say. I look at some work that other people have done that's really bad, that's done well, and then I look at the stuff that I don't like that I've done, and I go, it's better than that, and it feels better. And I feel better about that. It's weird. It's a weird place to be in, but sometimes you need
Yeah.
those moments where you look at the work that your peers or sometimes the people who are just coming up make, and you go, yeah, it's okay, and you realize like how much pride you. If someone were to come up to you and go, I didn't like that. If that doesn't aggravate you, then you don't have pride in what you
Yeah.
do. I think a lot of times, like not being able to like take a bow is one thing, but to know it's good and then to have someone go, what would have been better if like they should have fan casted this so that like I made an AI. I used AI to replace uh to replace all the characters, all the people who played in Evil Dead with Tom Cruise's face, and it's amazing. It's Evil Cruz dead now, and it's amazing. And you just look at that and you go like, I hate technology. Technology
Yeah.
is the worst. I don't want anything to do with this. I'm gonna go back to scratching things into a page like a
Only
caveman.
on a page that feels good
Because
though.
yeah, but it's got to feel good though. It's got to have that texture. It's got to have that weight. Um,
Oh, that's awful.
yeah, you figure out how to make peace with it. I guess. I don't think. I think I'm a. I look more sometimes at my achievements, even though I like to say those don't matter
Right.
as much because like my financial achievements on art have been very well, so I can look at those, but oftentimes I feel kind of like those are a little hollow
Yeah.
sometimes. But then I think of like the basic aspect of there was a time in my life where I would look at a blank page, I would start to draw something, get like 2.5 lines in and go, I fucked it up, and then I take
Yeah.
it, throw it away. And I've learned to like just let that go, where it's like, it's not perfect, I can fix it later, and then I just keep going with it, and I keep working and I keep making and I keep doing all these things. Like there's very little stuff that I just trash and throw away. And for me, that is like my biggest achievement, that I learned to accept my style of art. Because I always tell artists that your style is simply how you draw something and you're okay with it. And that's it. That is whether you mean for it to be a signature thing or not, how you draw an eye is very signature to you. Even when you're trying to draw like somebody
Right.
else, it's signature to the way that you do it because your hand curves in a certain way, or your shoulder, or your elbow, or whatever. And I think, the same way Wes Anderson has a style in directing and stuff like that, like they've all got these. When you learn to love your style, you learn to accept and appreciate yourself a little
Yeah.
more. Even if you can't admit it to yourself, like there's definitely like a thing that you do that you always do. And you say it's like a thing that it's like, oh well, it's just because I like to finish things.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, but that's you love that about it. You do.
It's true. I mean, you bring up something that I think it's kind of overlooked. A lot of the times when we talk about art, especially in 2023, in the age of AI and tablets and all the technology shit, it's the fact that you can just tap undo and redo something 43 times and it costs nothing. It's a joke. It takes the humanity out of everything. And I think that was really important just to highlight and point out. Because even in like music, in certain records, when you can hear no, their voice was not perfect right there, but something about that makes it that much more personal because I know that it was them. I know it wasn't, the 840-second take that they auto-tuned that made it sound that good on the track. It is that interesting.
Oh yeah. I mean it's like film, it's like taking pictures with film. Like there is an imperfection there. They had 25 chances to get
Yeah.
it right, type of thing. I mean, I don't think I know I come hard on AI people a lot. So But I don't think people are talentless because they work on digital stuff. I think some
Oh yeah,
digital stuff is
for sure.
amazing. I think there's definitely like, I think there's so much complexity to being good at your craft. I think there are definitely people who try and shortcut things, and I think they are going to regret that in 10 years. Like I think there was like an interview I did maybe about a year ago. Somebody asked me, what do you think is the difference between your art and the art that some of these people are doing that's like following trends, or they're using filters or doing stuff like this? And I was like, I'll still be here in 10 years
Yep.
because I have a passion for what I do. You oftentimes, people who oftentimes use kind of more like fast ways to do things don't oftentimes appreciate them. And then when they need to dissect them to go back and I look back at some of my old work and I'm like, man, you had patience. I don't have that anymore. But I can appreciate that I did at the time. I see it. I knew an art professor once who told me, she was a college art professor who was taking in people to admit to the school. And she said the biggest problem you run across with people who use those types of things are their portfolios are all over
Yep.
the place. You can't get consistency when it's not you actually making it. Like you won't find that. You won't find overarching themes. You won't find messages in these moments. Like I don't necessarily always mean to have depth to everything I do, but I can tell you what I was thinking at the time and what was going on in the world while looking
Yep.
at it. Like it takes me back to a certain part in my life, and I was called like a time traveler moment where you go back, you look at something, and you're like, oh yeah, no, I remember that. No, that was not a good idea. That was not a good idea. I got food poisoning right after that.
So you talk about being here in 10 years. What are some achievements that you want to knock out over the next few years?
I want to get into some more crafty type things. Like I've been playing with this idea for years of making like a weird kind of like the way the book is with all the like the crows that have like the faces and stuff with them. I've got my book right here too. Um, Maybe taking something like one of
Yeah.
these and making them into like a piggy bank
Nice.
and selling those shows. Like I think that would just be so
Yeah.
cool. I want my brand, which is Painter Files, because I have like the Painter Files podcast. There's Painter's Breakfast. There used to be Painter's Radio, but that went away. The app I was using died. Amp was the app. Amp was owned by Amazon, I think, and then they shut it down so they
Of
couldn't make any
course.
money off of it. Which weird. You can't play other people's music and make money. That's so strange. Um, and yeah, and then I've got the videos and I've got all these other things, and I'd love to see that expand. Expand and be something that I can do more often. I'd love to finally make that set and burn my hands with
Yeah.
hot glue. Um, get some industrial hot glue gun and just somebody look at me and go like, "What happened to your arm?" And be like, "Well, we don't need to talk about it. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine
There
in a
was there
couple
was a
weeks.
glue
It's fine. It's
incident.
fine. There's a glue incident. It's fine. It's not a big deal."
So Painter Files podcast. You want to tell everybody what that is, since we didn't spend any time on that?
My podcast, my on again, off again podcast, is basically just kind of like a painter's diary. Like it's one of those. I let people know what's going on
Yeah.
in my life. I let people know what I'm working on as far as art goes. A lot of times we talk about like things that are going on in the art world, hot takes, sadly. And just interesting little bits. I mean, so I'll do like a movie review every once in a while if I really see a great movie I like. If I see a movie that's like ridiculously bad and I enjoy it, like Shin Godzilla. I love Shin Godzilla. It's such an ugly
Yeah.
movie, but I love it partially because he's so ugly in that. I remember growing up watching like Godzilla movies and like Kamen Rider and just all stuff that was like dubbed and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And just those are the movies of like my childhood, and I remember watching them on like VHS and black and
Yep.
white, or gray and black is probably a better way to describe it. Um, yeah, having to get one of those like tape grinder thing. You put it in, you hit it down, it rewinds tape for you. Like the whole thing. You watch a tape so much that it would
Yep.
rip, and you'd have to like spool it, do the sad spool out of the VCR, and be like, "Oh, it's dead now." And you had to decide whether you were mature enough to just throw it away. So you just had a bunch of boxes of tapes that you couldn't play anymore.
Did you go see Godzilla -1 yet?
I have not got to see it yet. I hear it's really good though.
I'm dying to see it. Unfortunately, it's been busier than hell. So hopefully soon.
Yeah, that's kind of been the problem right now too.
Yeah, so Painter Files will be linked in the
Yeah.
description below for everybody. Check out the Painter's Breakfast. Buy some arts. I will link everything possible under the sun. Any other projects you want to make people keen to?
Things about stuff. I wanna eventually. I'd love to at some point in time, like start maybe like a artist summer camp. I think that'd be cool to get like a bunch of artists together who are coming up, who for some reason think I'm doing well, and then I can kind of help them work on some projects, and then maybe get them some shows and just do stuff like that. We do more like more, I guess, more come together and make like an art collective
Yeah.
type of thing. And like I'm always like meeting up with other artists, and like we do stuff together every once in a while. I'd love to grow that more. I think that would be really fun to have like a summer gallery walk together and stuff like that. Like all my friends get cool and then they move away. So they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna move." It's a strange, fun thing, but it
So
is what it
everybody that's an
is.
artist that's cool moved to DC, basically.
Basically, either that or get one of those weird like Roombas, but put like an iPad on it, and we can hang out. It'll be great. We can hang out.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye out on that. I mean, there's a bunch of people that I think that are coming up that would probably benefit from the literally at this point decades of experience doing the admin side of it. That's something that most people don't learn, like the contract thing. People get taken
Yeah.
advantage of, the how best ways to store items, best ways to not have things get stolen, things to look out for a gallery. I'm sure there's a lot that you could teach people.
I mean, I'm trying. Very cool. I thought of my top. You didn't ask me about my top 5 movies. I thought we were
Oh,
trying.
let's do it. Let's
We got to do
discuss.
the top five.
I'll splice this in. Let's
I
do a top
stressed out
five
about
then.
it all day. I was like, I got to come up with the top five. I even
All
wrote
right,
it
Jaw.
down.
Hit me with the number 5. Let's discuss number
All
5.
right, number 5, Slice,
Okay.
the werewolf pizza movie.
Yeah. That
It's
came out
so
of
bad.
nowhere.
With Chance the Rapper. It was such a bad,
Yeah.
fun movie. It's so bad, but it's such like a well-produced grindhouse movie. That's how I would
It's
think of.
it's pretty fun.
It is fun though. It was one of those movies I saw. It brings me back to the Blockbuster video thing where like I found out about movies because the trailers of unknown movies
Yep.
that would then come out, and then you'd have to like search because there's no internet at this point.
Of
So or
course.
there's not a real internet anyways. So you've got to go to tape stores and like look through boxes and shelves to find these like weird little
Yep.
gems basically. And so Slice was past that, but it's kind of one of those things where it was like I saw a trailer and I was like, when is this movie gonna fucking come out already? I
Well,
gotta
and
watch this
Slice is
movie.
kind of exactly like that. It's only
Yeah.
been released on DVD. It barely played anything theatrically.
You
That
can get
movie
it
got
digitally now,
Yep.
but it barely. Yeah, I don't think I'd be surprised if anyone ever saw it in a movie theater. To be honest.
It played a festival or 3, I'm sure.
Okay, well that's cool. So it's not
All
just
right.
me. Nice.
Chance the Rapper at number 5. What do we got at number 4?
Moonrise Kingdom.
Okay.
I just like the way that movie looks.
Yeah.
Like there's just such like a good like childhood stab a guy who tries to stab your dog movie, and I just I appreciate that.
Have you seen his last few movies?
I didn't see the very last one. I saw the French Connection, the French Dispatch, which
Yeah.
I thought was good. I feel like his movies have kind of fallen off a little bit, but they're still beautiful. Visually, they're amazing. But
Speaking of styles, somebody that
yeah,
obviously
very
has a style.
stylistic. His style brings me back. I don't always love his movies, but his style brings me back.
All right, Chance the Rapper, Wes Anderson. What we got at number 3?
The Shape of Water, because I love Guillermo del Toro.
Nice pick. Yeah.
That is such
What's
a.
great about this one?
I like the time period. The way that's kind of shot looks really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Time period sounds wrong because I'm like, no, early 1950s is not a good time period for anything.
Wait, that
Um,
wasn't a good period of
no,
life
it's
for
not a good
people?
period so much. But like the way it's shot, I love like the Creature of the Black Lagoon
Yeah.
look to the monster. There's just something very kind of, it's dark, but it's also kind of sunny at the same. But it's like there's a nice color palette to it, but it's a
Yeah.
pretty dark movie. But it's got a lot of like yellows and like light blues and stuff in it,
Yeah.
and like kind of crimson reds and stuff. It's very, I don't know, it's very beautiful to the eyes, and the story's really good.
Very Del Toro too. A
Yeah,
lot of his
extremely
stuff.
Del Toro.
Again, very style focused
Yeah,
director.
no, I'm weird that way.
No, that's a good
Let me
thing.
see. Science of Sleep,
Okay.
because I'm addicted to the style of that movie. Uh, a surprise one, Nacho Libre. I love Nacho
I
Libre.
adore Nacho Libre.
It's so stupid, but so good. Oh my God. My wife and I will randomly just kind of say lines from that movie
Same.
for no reason. There's no build up to it at all. She'll just look at me and say, "Get that corn out of my face." And I'm like, yeah, yeah, that's a good movie. We should watch that movie again.
I kind of want to watch that tonight now.
It's so good. So
Nacho
good.
Libre is a solid pick.
And I love it because like I grew up watching like Mexican wrestling most of my life. And so it's a great depiction of what Mexican wrestlers look like.
Yep.
Like they're not particularly buff. They're just kind of strong, upper bodied, little legged men. And they do all these crazy things because they're basically just acrobats working off of each other. And that movie really kind of illustrates that really well, where it's just
Yep.
ridiculous and it calls itself out for being ridiculous. And I love that. It's one of the only Nickelodeon movies. I was shocked when I found out it was made by Nickelodeon.
It was an odd time for Nickelodeon, I think.
Yeah, I was like, this is like dark for them, actually.
Yeah.
This is kind of a dark movie, but I love that movie. That movie's great.
It's a fun pick. Any other major ones that you want to point out?
The last one was The Crow. The Crow was one of those movies
Oh.
when I was younger. This really pretty girl loved that movie. And so I had to see that movie with her sitting in a basement. And it became like this really. She was not as into it as I thought she was. And I was more into the movie than I was ever going to want to hang out with her. And like I'm 12. So, yeah, but it was one of those movies where like I loved it's such a powerful it's such a powerful but like silly in some ways movie.
Yeah.
And it's not particularly colorful, but it's got some great one-liners in it. And
Great soundtrack.
They just get, God, yeah. It was Alice in Chains. Jeez, I haven't heard anything similar to them in a very long time.
Killer
And then
soundtrack.
STP and just, geez, man. That's a whole nother conversation right there. If it's movies on soundtracks, there's so many movies that have better soundtracks than they do movies.
Yes. Yeah. There was one movie. I was just talking about this with my mom. God, what is the name of it? It was Queen of the Damned.
Yes.
That soundtrack is incredible.
The
That movie is
soundtrack
not.
incredible. The movie is not. Well, it's like Garden State. Garden State has a great soundtrack.
Yep.
Garden State is an okay movie, but it has a generational soundtrack though.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those things.
Captured a lot.
I'd love to like give people like bullshit, like super deep answers for like your top 5. You're like, oh, The Color Purple. And and it's like, no, I'm sorry. I like stupid movies that are fun. And they create the best movies I like are the ones where I'm like watching them and I have to almost pause it to go then make art because I'm inspired and I'm like, I can't sit still anymore. Like those are my favorites.
So to finish that thought out then, when's the last time that happened? What's the last thing that made you pause and go immediately empty your brain?
I think I was watching. This is stupid.
I love that.
I think I was watching sitting down on the couch with my wife watching the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie.
Okay, but to be fair, it's a very pretty movie.
It's a very pretty, but it's also a very fun movie. And I was like, I want to and I didn't want to make any Ninja Turtle stuff or anything. I was like, oh man, it would be really cool if I made this crazy surrealist painting on the back of a turtle. Like I make this giant painting of a turtle and then I make this figure on top of it and all these things going on. And then I was like, okay, let me go work on that. And I just got up. My wife says I'm notorious for it. I'll just get up and walk off into the studio. And she's like, you're not coming back? And I was like, oh, sorry. We're still watching the movie. I forgot. And I'll come back and whatnot.
I love that. Top 5 big points for me. Love a few of those. It's solid picks. And to be fair, I think a lot of people are about to discover The Crow for the first time. I believe the producer or somebody like that just posted online that they're working on a 4K remaster of it. And so it's probably about to get a lot of attention.
As long as they don't remake it, I'm fine.
I believe that has already happened.
I know. I don't want to see that. I'm not going to watch it.
Well, it'll be maybe the.
I'll probably.
That was a quick flop.
I don't want to, but I'll probably watch it.
Well, all we can hope for is it'll be the goth anthem for a generation. We'll see.
We can only hope. I'm hoping they'll pick someone over the top as a villain, like Jason Momoa or something.
That'd be fun.
Just like what? Did you see the original at all? What? Okay.
Jaw, this has been incredible. I hope for many years of inspiration and for lots of success in your future.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much. It has been an honor and a pleasure to do this.
We'll talk soon.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Disconnected Podcast. There's one big thing that you could do to help the show, and that is to leave a rating and review on the podcast service of your choice. Thank you.
If you're looking for more horror outside of the mainstream, look no further than Unsung Horrors, a podcast about underseen horror movies. I'm Lance.
And I'm Erica. Every other week, we'll cover a horror movie with fewer than 1,000 views on Letterboxd. We'll even give you double feature recommendations to pair with the movies we discuss.
From gothic to shot on video, from slashers to comedies, from giallo to J-horror. We'll cover all the subgenres. So join us as we unearth these hidden gems of horror.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at Unsung Horrors, available wherever you listen to podcasts. And part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.